Alright, and welcome to another segment of Coal Region Discontent. Remember, you can always follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel, both at Coal Region Discontent, and also now a podcast on anchor.fm/coalregion-discontent. Here we have the Zerby Township Supervisory meeting, and forgive the editing, for the sun wasn't working with me. It was in a garage, so the audio wasn't very good, and I ran out of battery in one of my cameras. I'll try to do better next time, but I tried to get it out in a timely fashion. I only edit out normal business things, like when they voted on small payments or things like that. So here you are. Enjoy. Remember to share this video and like and follow and subscribe to the pages.
Expecting a big crowd tonight. Probably, sometimes you don't realize that our meeting room is not that big, so we have never been able to fit you all in there. So that's why we're excited about that. We also have a letter from Senator Gordon. Actually, we were copied on it, and he's sending it to Secretary Chapman, Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development. Dear Dennis, I write in support of a recent grant application submitted by Zurby Township in Aoaa County for a multimodal transportation fund grant in the amount of $85,422. Zurby Township is submitting this grant application in order to obtain the funding needed to repair a much-needed bridge in its community. Due to damages primarily sustained through age and deterioration, the 11th Street Bridge is closed. This poses a problem to the residents of 11th Street and neighboring Moffennoy Street, who often have to take longer alternative routes to go to and from other sections of the community. Specifically, Zurby Township will use these grant funds for the cost of equipment, labor, and engineering involved with repairing the structure. I hope you will recognize the importance of the project and its residents and urge your favorable consideration of their funding request. Thank you for your consideration, John R. Gordon. We also have another letter from a concerned citizen, the Zerbe Township Supervisors. I'm not going to read the whole letter, it's rather lengthy, but it has to do with the timbering project, which I'm sure a lot of you are here about, and she's what's that?
Yeah, there's a radio playing back here.
She's expressing her concerns about the timber. And that's all I have on the correspondence.
Well, hey, Mike, if it's concerning the timbering, shouldn't we hear it?
Can you hear what?
The letter. You said there was a letter concerning the timbering, and most of the people are here.
If you want to hear it, I'll read it. It's rather lengthy. Lived my whole life. Why? Because especially the beautiful mountains, quiet, peaceful. Most neighbors are great, willing to help others out in time of need. Very few nature disasters such as tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, but now certain people for profitable gain want to change all that for the beautiful area. Sometimes you feel when this is threatening us, who cares about what we work for all our lives? I personally have never collected any kind of government check until retirement and got Social Security, for which I paid into approximately 50 years. I did get stimulus checks, as everyone did. I am a widow, and in 2 months I will be 93, but now, at this time in my life, we'll have to be concerned about what is being proposed on our side of the mountain. All the logging and destruction of the land above our properties will affect the water runoff, flooding our basements. What will this do to our property value? You know what it will do. I can't emphasize enough how wrong this will be and must not be allowed. please do not destroy our mountain. The greatest responsibility we have is our own well-being, families, and others. Please, whoever is responsible for pushing this forward, consider what you would want if your home and area was threatened. I apologize for not being an elegant writer and have no computer to type. This letter comes straight from the heart. Again, please take into consideration all this in what you are undertaking. So really worth your time. Brian. All right, solicitor's report.
Last meeting, we discussed a possible amendment to our zoning laws regarding the height of outbuildings or buildings allowed within the township in certain zoning areas, being increased from 14 feet, which is the current standard, to 25 feet. After we discussed it, the supervisors and a lot of people present felt it may not be best, even though that was kind of the recommendation, to lock it in on just a set number where everything under is okay and everything over is not okay. So what we were talking about doing was putting some standards that could allow for a special exception if it's over the 25-foot increase. And what I did was come up with a couple things that I pulled from other similar zoning laws to say what our zoning hearing board should consider before they allow or don't allow building permits that are going to be higher than that. And what I came up with is the zoning hearing board may grant special exceptions to exceed this 25-foot if the following things are considered and not affected. Number one, the surrounding buildings in the area of where this new proposed building may go would not be affected by the excessive height. The character and nature of the neighborhood would remain consistent with other existing buildings. The excessive height would not interfere with any view of the surrounding properties. And this is, believe it or not, a shadow study is a real thing, so I put it in here. A shadow study to be completed by the applicant which shows that the excessive height of the building would not cause shadowing of neighboring properties or buildings in a way that would be detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood. For instance, if you were on the north side of a mountain and you had a shadowing building, it could theoretically increase moss growth on your roof and things like that. So that is in fact a thing, and I dealt with it a lot when we looked at different windmill studies. Any other relevant factors by the applicant or objecting parties withstanding, meaning if you lived across town where this building was going, you're really not an affected party. But if you lived right next door to this building, we would obviously want to consider more what you say versus someone who lives a mile or two away. Those are what I came up with that I think would give our zoning board a little bit of more flexibility than rather than doing just a flat standard like none of you wanted to do, which I think is a good idea, not to just leave it at a number. If you like those or want to get rid of any of them or add some, we could discuss that now. But if you like what I put together, and that's all I really added from last time, then the next step would be for me to submit this to the township and county planning boards to see if they have any comment on it, for or against it. So if you like it, you can give me a motion and vote today to do that. If you want to look at it and think about it and table it, we can do that also. And I'll take any, if the supervisors will allow, I'm happy to answer any questions from the audience on this one particular issue while we're on it, because then we don't have to come back to it later. So while they're thinking, does anybody have any questions on this possible zoning amendment regarding building height? I see that's why none of you are here. Okay, thank you.
Police report, please.
This police report is for the month of July 2021. We had a total incidents, calls, traffic, 130. We had 3 calls for grass complaints, civil calls. Officer miscellaneous calls, we had 22, which are like trees down, open doors, welfare checks, follow-up incidents. Fire calls, assist fire company once. We had 1 drug alcohol related. Public assist, we had 2, which are like jump start batteries, disabled vehicles, vehicle lockouts, etc. Traffic stops, we had 41, which also include traffic hazards. Non-traffic criminal 1, parking tickets, complaints 4, police warnings we had 3, medical assist calls we had 11, neighbor disputes we had 3, animal calls we had 1, simple arguments disputes we had 3, which are like disorderly conduct. Thefts, fraud we had 4, assisting outside agencies once, criminal complaints 3, writing anthracite calls we had 1 for trespassing, disturbances, noise, domestic 4, harassment, threats we had 1, police incidents that we handled over the phone 3, suspicious persons 4, calls referred to the code officer we had 2, domestic violence abuse we had 1, traffic accidents we had 3, total trespassing not related to writing anthracite we had 4, assaults we had 1, total miles that we patrolled for last month were 1,455 miles, and that's all of the stats. I just wanted to thank everybody and anybody that came out for National Night Out. It was held August the 3rd, and we raised a total of $306.40. Thank you.
Street drainage. We looked at it and looked at the drainage area and the current slope we have on that road, and we came up with an 18-inch pipe for that area that would work well. Obviously, if you wanted to go a little bit bigger, just in case, you're more than welcome to. But I think our minimum size, we ran through the system, 18-inch would work well in that area.
What's the next size up?
24.
Is that where you were thinking, down was 18?
Yeah, there's no slope for 24 between Mountain One and the creek.
There should be, yeah. Yeah, we just ran like a minimum of what would work well. So if you wanted to upsize that a little bit, there shouldn't be any issues.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you need to know that tonight, or?
No.
Okay.
No, if that's something,
We're gonna try to conquer that ourselves.
yeah, I don't see, the bidding, portion of the project is $11,300. If you're over that, you have to have 3 quotes, and anything beyond that, threshold would be good bidding. So if you, anything under 11,000, you can do
Okay.
within the township. So if that's small enough project you want to handle.
We're gonna handle that, but we're probably gonna do things.
Okay. And it's, the creek wall collapsed on Montgomery Street. I finally heard back from DEP because we were trying to get the emergency permit for that to do the work rather than wait. Because sometimes the county's review is sort of an unknown time period on their, when they'll get back to us. He informed me that the county right now can review an application and turn that around fairly quickly. So what we have on the schedule is we're going to have our, since it requires design drawings for the restoration, we can have our survey crew out next week and get that whole application started. And my turnaround time on that would be like around 2 weeks. I could have something submitted to the county for review, if that's okay.
Sounds fine.
And the last item I have was an update from Craig Zach. He informed me that you were aware that there was some issues at the treatment plant. There was the driver for the decanter in one of the tanks wasn't working properly, so he was diverting the flow to the other tank to keep the treatment flowing and keep the effluent going out. And then while he only had the one tank up and running, the drive on that decanter also went. So therefore, any inflow that was coming in was matching the effluent going out. So it wasn't mixing, it wasn't treating. So when there's aeration coming up and mixing all the solids and everything, like I said, whatever was going in, it was all mixed together, and that was going out, so it wasn't being treated at that moment. It was discharging into the stream. So what we have, Craig was on site with Steve Kuzio from DEP, and we discussed that with him. He did mention that there will be some notice of violations and probably some fines along with that, but the problem is resolved. As of now, we did get the manufacturer on site to fix the tank that was primarily treating everything, and now we're still waiting for parts for them to fix the other tank. But as of right now, the tank's fully operational and treating everything. So we're just going to keep in touch with DEP and make sure they're on the same page and getting all the updates, so we don't have any further miscommunication. And when that next tank's up and running, Craig's drafting a letter that he's going to send to DEP just to notify him and sort of resolve any problem or any issues that we have with DEP coming back on site and potentially issuing any more violations. So as of right now, everything's up to speed with DEP, and we feel confident that the issue is resolved.
All right, is there any public comment on any items that are on the agenda?
I just have a question on, how long was the treatment plant down, as far as the effluent? How long was it running like that for?
I got notification in, it was late March, early April, that the decanter of the second tank went down, and then I think it was only a month or so when the main tank decanter malfunctioned.
I was talking more about the effluent, like how long was it running like that before it was
I don't think it was
days, weeks, months?
less than a month. I don't have the exact timeline, but it wasn't long, because what the treatment plant does, it generates, the sampling that's performed and reports that to DEP. So they see all those discharge results of what type of pollutants are going into the stream, and so they flag that, and they responded accordingly. So they don't let that sit around. So it was acted on fairly quickly.
Fifth item, I think we discussed this a couple of meetings ago about paving a portion of Cole Street. We'd like to pave all the roads in town because they're in a deplorable condition, to be honest with you, but we gotta do what we're able to afford. And we tried to identify the worst street that we thought in town and what we could afford. So, from our perspective, it looked like the street from up on Cole Street, from Pine Street to 2nd Street, is probably one of the worst in town, and that's the one we want to address. We had a estimate, if I remember correctly, I don't have the exact figure, but I know it was roughly 125,000, something like that, and that was back in the spring, I think, when we had that estimate. So we're hoping that if we put it out on bids, that it does come back around that same figure. All right, again, number 9, old business, I'll refer to Dan. Purchase of a truck for the sewer plant in Township. Plowing?
Our blue Ford that we have is on its last legs. Before I became supervisor, we fixed it in my shop. The frame is pretty well shot, so we're looking to buy a gas-powered Chevy with a plow on it, and a utility bed, put all fittings in for during the summer to do certain stuff for the sewer plant, and that's at $64,104.88. So if I could have, oh yeah, and the truck we have now it won't pass inspection anymore. Cab mounts are shot, frame's gone, so that's why we're purchasing a new one.
Dan, where did you find that truck at?
We went
Oh, Coast Guard.
yeah, we went up there and we looked at all of them, and this was the best bang for the buck. So this is what we went with.
Okay. just so everybody knows, that's like a pre-approved purchase site for all townships, that we don't have to bid because they're the lowest numbers collectively put into every township that would want one through them. That's one very effective way to buy a piece of equipment if we need one, which we do. So it won't be one when we shop around and bid out locally with our specs. As long as you buy through them, you're permitted to do so as a township, because they've already been bid by the counties and state.
And we also need to order it like ASAP. If anybody bought a new vehicle lately, you're waiting on everything. So we may not get it. We're hoping to get it before winter. So.
Okay, next item on your old business credit card application, I'll defer to Judy on that.
We decided as a township that we needed to have a credit card. Sometimes you're able to get a better cost if you're able to buy things with, with the use of a credit card, and sometimes our grant applications require us to pay certain fees with a credit card rather than a check or a bank draft. So for several reasons, we need to apply for a credit card. So I've been out to M&T Bank and have the application, and there are a few things that we're kind of holding off on until we actually go through with the process, because it requires signatures, and we have to determine, who's going to be in the office to be able to be one of those signators, as well as one of the supervisors. So we're just waiting for, just to kind of get that in here, but we will be doing that.
Number 10, under new business, grants in process. Well, as Ryan mentioned, we have the recycling grant going, and we have the sewer rehab project and the Western Undercurrent going. Those are the ones that are currently alive, I should say. And we have submissions for grant applications for, I mentioned this at prior meetings, to pave up around the school, all the way up Fifth Street, down Pole Street, and come back down Sixth Street. So we have an application in to pave that. Estimates on that are over $1 million just to do it. It has to all be rebuilt, and we have to actually, if the grant is approved, the township, I believe, has to kick in 30% of that. So we're keeping our fingers crossed on that one, and we also have an application in to repair the 11th Street Bridge, which hasn't been opened in a couple of years. We're hoping that we get approval on that also. And the final grant application that we have in is for a new police truck. Mike, where are you at?
We're in the office.
We felt that a truck might be more beneficial to the township rather than applying for an SUV or something. And if we do get that, I believe that's, I'm not sure if there's a match on that or not.
That's full thing plus 4 chests in there.
Yeah, full mount. So I'm keeping our fingers crossed on that one also. Is there anything on this? Or, let's see. Second thing we have is we're going to talk about, and we're hoping to institute a drug testing policy and alcohol for employees as well as supervisors. So that's something we want to talk about, discuss, and probably implement down. So under new business, we're looking into, we received COVID funds, as some of you might know. We were awarded, I don't know the exact figure, but it was roughly $190,000 from COVID funds. We got half this year, we're supposed to get half next year. It can only be used for certain things. One of the things that we definitely want to do is look into live streaming our meetings to prevent things that have happened in the last month or so. That you can actually see it online and see what's going on in our meetings and get the facts instead of misinformation. And the last thing under new business
Let me
is,
just add something there, okay?
go ahead.
I think it's also important because not everybody has the ability to come down to a township meeting, and it doesn't mean that they're not interested. And so just, going forward, I think it's important for the information, for transparency, that all the citizens who are interested in what's going on within the township and who have access to a computer and can use an online platform will be able to do that and become much more up-to-date and familiar with all that's happening within the township.
How much would that cost to live stream the meeting?
There are ways that you can do it through certain platforms that aren't that expensive. We're just in the process of being able to figure that out, and when we get that information, we'll certainly give it to you. There are some Facebook platforms that can be used for business that you can put business information on. If we want them televised, that's a very different thing. So we're just going to look into all the possibilities, but the important thing is that we want to be able to get the information out to people on a more regular basis so that, people know what's happening, what decisions are being made, and are more involved in really, the supervisor's day-to-day kind of business and decisions that are being made.
Do Lime Mountain High School students have any kind of way they could do that as a project, as something to help out, so you don't use that money for that?
Criteria that we have to follow to be able to use that money. And so we can't just use it generally for things that we think, great, we have these extra funds and we'll be able to use it. It's pretty broad, but it's, broad in certain areas.
But couldn't Lime Mountain students volunteer?
Well, I can't answer. It's a
But
good
we have to
idea.
explore, and,
It's a good
we
idea.
will definitely inform everybody which route we're going to
I'm
take.
just thinking of ways to use that money somehow else. I agree with that. I think live streaming is great, but I just think that maybe we could look at using the people in our,
Sure.
in our
It's a good idea.
That's become very popular with sporting events. I'm sure all of you here have kids and grandkids that do some sort of sporting event. And I know the last tournament my girls played in, they live streamed every game of a 60-some team tournament to the average cost of $5 to $10 per game, which was paid for by the prescribers that were watching it. So they're right on the money here, and it isn't a very expensive thing. You will have some hardware costs, and the facility had that in place. But once you have your basic hardware costs, where I just did it in my office for like $100, the actual doing of it is very commonplace, and it's just been lightning by COVID, being the technology being pushed forward to do this, because people want that now. And so it's not as costly as you may think, but you're right. It takes sometimes a younger crew to put it in place that are more familiar with doing it and doing it cheaply.
What platforms were you thinking about using? I mean, YouTube and Facebook is free. So
Yeah, I know. Facebook is you're a very good way to do it, and that's how they
That's why
do
I
it.
suggested.
These softball games that I've seen. But yeah, I'm not a computer guy. I just know that I asked for the cost, the same question she had. What's this costing us? And they said $5 to $10 a game, which I thought was unbelievable. That you could watch a little league softball game all around the country for $5 to $10 a game. I thought that was pretty cool.
At this time, we will take public comment from any Zerby Township resident. If you state your name and address.
My name is Patty Pulaski. I live at 650 Trevorton Road, Shimoda. I'm here today as a spokesperson for Citizens United to Stop the Timber Project. Thank you for the opportunity to voice our concerns over this project and further development of the Aoaa authority trails on the Western Reserve and into the town of Zerby. I would like to quote one of our members, which reflects the overwhelming sentiment of Zerby Township residents. What is the most disturbing to the citizens at the very core of all of this is that the elected officials whom we chose to represent us, and our best interests, chose to proceed into an agreement without our knowledge of the plans, meaning the bond agreement. Mr. Porzy asked me, I went out to see him a Friday or two ago to give him a right to know request. He asked me, how did we find out about this project? Well, one citizen attended this meeting and heard about the sewer project. That citizen called another citizen, my neighbor, and Roseanne ran up the driveway and said, Patty, this is happening, we have to stop it. She ran up my driveway. Since the Aoaa is an authority established through the county commissioners, we the taxpayers have a right to know, and we should have a voice to express opposition or concerns on any project put forth which directly impacts our quality of life. I would add, we're not here to debate the economic gain touted nor the improvement made to barren strip land, but rather the force in which elected officials have barreled through, or in this case, attempted to barrel through, without much regard to how we the taxpayers feel about intrusions to our quality of life. I would ask the supervisors, each one of you, would you want a timber project, and Mr. Weiss as well, in your backyard, or trail riders for the potentially next 50 years, because the leased land by the Aoaa is through the county for 50 years for a measly $300 and some a year? Would you want that bordering your property? In addition to the quality of life issues, residents raised valid concerns at our meeting, including, but not limited to, increased water runoff. Current problems have cost residents thousands of dollars. We asked, we went door to door, in waterproofing basins, replacing paved driveways, and stone, and the list goes on. A strain on the Zerby Township sewer plant due to increased storm drainage. A strain on township roads, which, as you stated, Mr. Schwartz, are in deplorable condition currently. Traffic safety, as disturbing the environment will disrupt the wildlife. We have deer, we have turkey, we have fox, we have coyote, we have a bald eagle. All of that disruption leads to an increase in traffic accidents along Route 225. Jeff Marquette can tell you how many deer get hit right in front of his house every year. Questions for the supervisors. Why was this timber project barreled through without informing any of us? How can you, Mr. Schwartz, hold, I know, legally, it's okay, but I appeal to your moral conscience. How can you represent Zerby Township citizens and the Aoaa authority and assure all of us here that you are acting in our best interests, not what the Aoaa authority wants? Why? We were told at the county commissioners meeting, and those of us who were there will tell you, they did not know, quote, that that timbering project was taking place on the parcels of land that are directly behind you and Jane and whomever else that sits at this meeting. Why did they not know? We, as Citizens United to Stop the Timber Project, sort of see that as a conflict of interest, Mr. Ford. And not to call out Mr. Billick, but I will. You also own an off-road business. Conflict of interest.
I don't do anything with Porzy. And Porzy had it out a couple times.
Well, good, but I'm calling that out because some people don't know the web that's been weaved.
Well, can I clear my name quick?
Well, you already did.
You know how many times I've been up there?
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad, okay?
And I don't
I
know
know
if
I'm
they-
getting confrontational, and I apologize,
you're-
but this
you're fine.
issue is core, and it's not just me, okay? Let me close. Through grassroots organizing in a 3-week time period, we were able to inform citizens by going door to door and telling them what was happening. I requested articles in our local newspapers. I gained the attention, or I should say we, our mission, but I was the spokesperson, of WPRE TV and Fox 56, which aired stories in support of our cause, meaning no timber project, no trail development, no disruption of life in Zerby Township. By talking with folks, meaning going to the bars, going door to door, going to our concerts, I can state with confidence, an overwhelming majority do not, and I emphasize do not, support the timber project nor trail development on or near highly residential areas in Zerby Township and Trevorton. In fact, utter contempt is a gentle adjective expressed, that I choose to express, by residents toward the Aoaa authority. Today, we present petitions. We have 222 signatures. These are copies. The originals went to the county commissioners. We tried in a very short time with a great group of people to inform people. This is a cross-section of Trevorton, but I guarantee you, we will go door to door and hit every single door in Trevorton if we have to stop further trail development. So what we would like to request moving forward as Citizens United to stop the timber project. No timber project should be carried out on our mountain, meaning that mountain, or in highly residential areas of Zerby Township. No trail development near residential areas which may provide direct access to Zerby Township residential areas, including the village of Trevorton. Lastly, we request an honest and open dialogue with all the entities involved in regard to trail development on the Western Reserve and plans to disrupt the quality of life for all taxpayers. We have another issue, but I'm not privy to talk about that today. There are several family members here that maybe will address it, maybe not. But just know, there are other concerns about that mountain and our quality of life that we wish to preserve without going into further detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome.
Patty, can I ask you one question about one thing you said?
Certainly.
You had said that the township entered into a bond agreement with them?
Not with the Aoaa, with the forester who was here at the last meeting.
That's how we found out.
That's how we found out.
What we actually asked him for?
Roger, could I address that, please? Let me address that first. First off, I want to thank everybody for coming. I am really, really hurt. Hurt by the fact that you chastised us at the county commissioners meeting, and you're chastising us here now. Especially on social media, without knowing the facts. You mentioned at the commissioners meeting how one citizen found out at our last meeting, that citizen informed another citizen, that citizen informed another citizen, and you're right, that's what happened. And that's how falsehoods get started, without getting the facts. And this is a very important statement that I'm making. Supervisors cannot approve or disapprove a logging operation. The only entity that can approve a logging on county property is the county itself. Keep that in mind. Our motion that we made last week was only, and I emphasize only, to approve ingress and egress from Pine to Second Street, subject to the bond requirement amount by our engineer. And if anybody wants to see the motion, it's right here in the minutes. Let me finish. After, or during that meeting, I think it was recommended that we put up a bond amount in around $250,000 or $300,000, something like that. And I don't remember anymore, but somehow we said that was kind of high, so we left it up to the engineer, Ryan, who's sitting up here. Ryan came back to us about a week later and said he thought that $150,000 was sufficient. So when that information got back to the forester, who was Nathan Court said that's probably going to kill the project because there's no way they're going to come up with a $150,000 bond. And we were excited to hear that because we thought it's not going to happen. It's not going to go through because of the bond amount. Okay? As far as the Aoaa, I wear two different hats, people. I lived in this town all my life. And for some of you to doubt that I'm not here working for this township is bull. I just can't believe it. And when I'm at the Aoaa, if anything comes up that involves Zerby Township, I abstain. And you can check the records for that. And anything that comes up here in town in regards to the Aoaa, I try to stay away from it. I wear two different hats. Okay?
Who voted for the bond?
Let me finish. Now, you cut up the Aoaa. How many of you know? Raise your hand. How much the Aoaa has donated to Zerby Township over the last 6 years? Raise your hand and tell me.
$90,000 last year, right? About $90,000 last year?
No. $43,000 over the last 6 years, which has helped us to balance our budget. Okay?
So it's about $90.
Let me finish. Also, within the surrounding townships, the Aoaa has donated over $378,000 to these townships to keep their budgets afloat.
You guys live on school market.
Let me finish. I didn't interrupt any of you before. I heard on social media, I'm not on social media, but people forward things to me. I do not get a salary from Aoaa. Whoever brought that up. I'm there to benefit the town, and that's my only reason. And you name one thing that I've done to Aoaa that hasn't benefited this town. Keep in mind also, and this will be my last statement, this was only a proposal by Nathan Court, the forester. There was no contract for us to sign. It was a proposal asking for Zurby to approve ingress and egress. That was it. The county, or the Aoaa, had to sign the contract for the county, not Zurby. We had nothing to do with it. It's just like if you own 100 acres out there in the mountains,
knew about
and you want to timber it, you have the right to do that. You don't have to come to Zurby Township.
Well, Mr. Schwartz, we
I'm
have
not
more
done.
than that.
I didn't interrupt you.
Well, I think you did.
I didn't interrupt you. You're out of order. I didn't interrupt you.
I apologize.
Now, there was a question that you had about, you wanted to ask me two questions. Go ahead. I forget what they were. I might have answered the one, I think, about the conflict of interest.
It was a conflict of interest. I'm sorry, Mr. Schwartz, but in talking to residents, we don't feel you're representing our interests
Why not? Tell
anymore.
me why.
Well, yeah, because there is a lack of transparency. For one, why did the AOA purchase the property on the top of Miller Hill? I went to that couple. He's here. My heart went out to them. Those logging trucks, you know why, and you won't admit it. I've read through the minutes. The writing is on the wall. The statements that Mr. Corsi made to me, reading between the lines, the statements Jim Backus made to my husband, because he called him personally, one only has to read between the lines. My first posts on Facebook were rants, but I started to dig for the facts, Mr. Schwartz.
There are no facts.
Well, they didn't be an office because then what are they, lies?
Yes, I did issue, it's water under the bridge, I just got done telling you that Zerby Township is not, it's up to the county to approve, the AOA with the county's approval. It's not up to Zerby, all we did was approve ingress and egress if it went through, that's all
But for
the court
18
was
months,
asking for.
did you not know this was happening? That is my question, a simple yes or no. The timbering project, which you knew was going to be behind our homes, behind Cindy's home, behind Jane's home, yes or no?
That answer, I'm gonna put on my AOA hat now. You're coming to the meeting next week, I'll answer it.
For the Zerbe Township people, answer the question. Period. Wow, you're not at the AOA.
Look, wait a minute. There's more to it than saying yes or no. And that's why I don't want to answer it. The AOA chairman will answer that. It's delivered a yes or no question.
Well, I've read through the minutes and we're gathering evidence, so get your story straight.
But there's more to it.
Well, that could be understood, but the bottom line is, you didn't bother to ask the people, do we want trail riders in Trafford like we have in
It has nothing to
Schmuck?
do with trail riders.
It
has to do with
does. Why did
timbering.
they purchase that
And that
property?
will be answered for you.
All right,
at
we'll
the
ask that at the
meeting.
AOAA, you better bet we will. I want to know why they bought $25,000 property up at the end of Miller
There's
Street.
no trail involvement, I guarantee you, planned on this
What do you think's gonna happen when we take all the trees out? They're gonna ride them.
Did you say at this point? That's the read between the lines.
It's a no-brainer.
Can I just say something from my limited perspective here as an appointed zoner? I never thought or was told that this project was a given. I was under the impression that the AOA and the county and Nathan Court were still trying to work out all the logistics around it, and the county and the AOA were not really happy with the forester and some of the decisions and some of the timing that was going on in the forester. And so I was never under the impression that there was going to be this project and it was in finance. Okay? I'm a property owner on the opposite side, on the public land on the other side. And I am annoyed enough with the traffic that goes by on Trevor. So Patty, to answer one of your questions, no, I would not be happy to have, these utility vehicles, these recreational vehicles driving on the mountain. I'm also a proponent of looking at the climate, and we live in a mountainous area. And with the weather changing and less snow and more rain, that also affects drainage and it affects your properties. And we as a community have to be concerned about that. Not just the AOAA, but more broadly, what happens to these mountains to protect the people who live in the valley. And many of you live in this valley. Okay? So I'll call you Auntie Lily. I saw the video from the Northumberland County Commission. What? Commissioners meet, which you can. It looked to me just just as a citizen, not as a supervisor, that there were some ostriches with their heads in the sand there, denying that there was any knowledge of a project of this extent was hard for me to believe. You were told that. I don't care what you were told. We're telling you things here tonight, but you're not believing what we tell you, and I don't have a problem with that. I'm simply saying that I, as a citizen, have an issue with that, because I just don't buy that that's all the truth and nothing but the truth. Chicatana was involved with the AOAA, and so is Kurt Mosser involved with the AOAA and getting grants and all kinds of other things. And I'm not trying to shuffle off responsibility or the comments that you're coming here to the supervisors of Zerby Township with, but there's a bigger picture, and that picture is important when it comes to your efforts and to your long-term outcome. We, like Mike said, have very little influence. I understand that you would like to have known sooner. I don't know what there was that we might have told you that wouldn't have, that would have been factual. When Mr. Reese brought up at the last meeting that we should have a bond, one of the comments from the forester, Nathan Ford, was, well, I don't know if the timbering company will do that. And I remember his response. Well, if a company like that won't give us a bond to protect our township streets, they're not a very good company. And so it's even more important that we have the bond. So from my perspective, we were trying to do what we could do to protect you, the citizens, in that regard. To your comments about, the vehicles being allowed up there, I don't know anything about that. All I know is that I would oppose it.
That's good to know.
Can I ask a question? Hold on. There's one very key point that I understand what everyone here is concerned about, but don't get confused about what's going on here. As a township, board of supervisors, we have no ability to tell the county they can't timber their lands, okay? And just focus on that one point. We have no ability to say who's going to forest it versus who is not going to forest it. That's why they're bidding it out. The only thing we can kind of control or put some influence on, and I'll tell you why I say kind of in a second, is how they get in and out, because they go on our streets, okay?
Why only 150?
What's that?
Then why only 150? Make it higher.
Well, that's what our engineer said, our streets won't get damaged. But you can't do that. You understand, if we ask for an unreasonable amount, they won't be allowed. But again, you're thinking now with your heart as opposed to your head. We cannot be unreasonable with the bond request. We have to be able to justify it. I don't know, they don't know. This gentleman is an expert, he tells us, that's your risk. So now we can justify and say, you need a $150,000 bond in case your trucks wreck our road. To be honest with you, do we have the utmost legal authority to mandate that? No, but the forester is trying to work with us so we can satisfy what we want to do and not do. Tow trucks every day use our roads and are a lot more than that, okay? And when you truthfully want to restrict weight restrictions on a road, we need to do it through ordinances and make it uniform with weight limitations recommended by our engineers. We're not doing that. We're saying if you want to use ingress and egress on the road requested, and he's asking that. He probably doesn't need to ask us that, but he is. We had said we will not approve or agree to anything unless you bond it so we are protected as a township. We have no ability to say you can timber or not timber. We have no ability to say you can ride or not ride, just like we don't on your private land. So I understand we're easy targets, and we're here and we'll listen, but please understand, if you want to fight this fight correctly, it's not with us. It's the owner of the land, which you are also taxpayers of. It is at the county level. Okay? Yes, sir.
Another question. So who would be the direct benefactor then of this timber project aside from the county? Is there like township be a benefactor?
No,
Aside from
county
the-
lands, I don't believe we will get any money
Nothing?
from it. I don't believe
You
so.
will.
It's a third. Sounds like that was said. Definitely sounds like that was said.
I can answer that.
Okay.
From what I heard, it's a third, a third, a third. Why now? Zurby. County.
Yeah, that's news to me.
So my question then is, who do we hold responsible for the damage? We're getting water damage. My mother-in-law's basement's eroding, her yard's eroding from the water runoff already. Who do we hold responsible for when it deteriorates more?
There's already damage.
There's already damage. Zerby Township can't even control the water now. Who's getting control?
Would have made those accommodations to try and prevent any runoff.
Okay, we already have runoff.
This man here has been waiting since I finished up, so I want to respect his.
So, my question is this.
Say your name, sir, please.
My name's Dan Zaglowski.
And your address.
So, we knew 18 months ago, from looking at the Aoaa records, that this was a possibility. Going back now, they hired a forester a year ago. You got hired a year ago, is that?
A year and a half ago.
A year and a half ago. When did you guys find out?
I found out about 2.5 months ago, 3 months ago. And then it was just all speculation.
Well, it's, at the time that they hire a forester, that's the time that you should inform the residents of Zerby that this is coming, that this is a possibility. That's where we have a problem.
I hear you, and I think.
We need to get no advance notice. It's just not right.
Dan, I can answer that. I should really let it up to the Aoaa, but I'll answer it. Back when this all came about, approximately a year and a half ago, you're right. They did identify certain acreage within the county that they thought might bring revenue to the county. And it wasn't just the mountain up there were different spots. At that time, there was no knowledge that this was going to be the first one selected.
Okay, so in the lease for the AOA, they have the timbering rights on the lease.
I'm sorry?
Timbering that we could do about it, but cooler heads prevailed and things worked out. So my question is, going forward then, is there a zoning thing that we can do? Is there anything that you guys can do as township supervisors?
I'll let Roger answer that, but again, I don't think we can deny timber.
And I think part of this question is, can we tell the community what might be happening that we know about, when in fact, there's nothing concrete? And I don't know whether or not that really is our responsibility, or is it the county's responsibility? Because we have limited information. And so, the county or the AOAA, but our information is very limited until the project gets further down the road. Roger?
On the zoning, could you do timber restrictions in certain zones within a township? The answer would be yes. We do have comprehensive zoning, but you cannot eliminate, you have to allow for everything somewhere in a township. So, can we say all forestry lands cannot be timbered? We can't. That would be an unenforceable zoning law. It's just like when people say, can you ban methadone clinics and strip clubs in the whole township? Because no one wants that next to their house, and understandably so. But the answer is no. You must allow for everything within a zoning plan. So,
Could you do a buffer zone?
could we do a buffer zone? We probably could do a buffer zone, okay? That is exactly the process we would have to do with this other zoning amendment that we were just talking about for building heights.
May I ask what's a buffer zone? I don't know what you're talking about.
Like he's talking about saying no timbering within certain areas close to the township, I'm assuming, like buildings.
What I
Residential.
think I was referring to is like, let's say you own a property on the mountain within 50 yards of your
Yeah,
boundaries, you can't, that's a buffer zone, right?
yeah, but it
Above
has
your
to be,
land.
you can't
Of your land.
just target specific, you'd have to say in the whole zone, timbering's allowed here but not allowed there. Again, it's really hard, That's called spot zoning, and that's not really allowed either. You can't say, okay, you can timber everywhere but this little spot, or this spot and this spot. It has to be part of a comprehensive plan. And we do have that, we've had that in place since pretty much the late 60s in this township. But can zoning be amended? Absolutely, sir. Zoning can be amended at any time that it's deemed advisable for the benefit of the township, like the building thing.
Well, I would say there's 220 people that would like to see that happen.
At least. Any other comments? Name and address.
Bob Trout, 216 Trevor Road. Who the hell gave them the right, the AOA, the right to go up there and dig around the trolley track?
Don't know what you're referring to.
Well, we get all that water down off the mountain now. Because they were up there digging around with dozers and backhoes.
Before they put the gate up, anybody that had a trail of any
More
kind.
than a dozen ditches before it's built, and that's
We get all the
literally all
water
they
down the
are.
mountain. Yeah, any kind of rainforest.
Since 2014 is when they first started digging around up there. And we've had so many floods in our yard,
All right,
in
I'll
our
answer
cellar.
that, and again, I should let this up to Jim back.
That's
I'll answer
the
it.
way.
This is what I know on that.
I just wanted to know who gave the authority to go up there and dig it around.
As you know, we had problems with Miller Hill out there, with runoff.
Yeah, well, we're on the other side of that.
I know. Miller Hill, we probably put, I'm guessing $30,000 in that street in the last couple of years.
I can believe it.
We told the AOA about it. You know what they did? You probably don't know this. They went up there and they put in at least 25 water boards up through the trolley track. We haven't had a complaint since, except I just heard your.
Yeah, when it comes down hard.
I haven't heard any other complaints about water runoff since they put in water.
Her road's like a flood zone. All the houses.
Question, like say Buddha or Billy Wilkinson, Paul Chloe, if Buddha or Billy Wilkinson timbers that land out there, and that water comes off into my basement and destroys my foundation, who would be legally responsible?
Normally the person who created the damage you could sue would be responsible.
And also remember that which can be beneficial. There's gotta be some runoff probably in the first year, but from what I understood, and I'm not an expert, but there could be some runoff in the first year, but it could also be a benefit to, the wildlife and so forth that you mentioned in that.
It's been running all the time.
It was not a clear cut like happened over here in the on the Trevor Mountain. And we didn't hear one complaint about that. Name and address.
My question is, who
Tom, name and address.
authorized,
Tom, name and address.
my name is Delmar Folds, 140 East Market Street, Trevor.
Okay.
Who authorized the AOA to come on Zerby's property, to put up gates, to go on our Zerby Township? Who authorized that? Where'd that come from? Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
To put gates up.
There's no land leased off the township. They're leased off of the Cumberland County. We didn't own any of that.
That's Zerby Township's.
No, but it's not our land.
It's not our land.
Taxpayers.
No, it's not. People who own the land. Just because you pay taxes here, we don't own your land. The township owns very little land. The land that the AOA park is on is county land. And
Some
a lot
of
of
it's
private
Zerby.
residents land, but not township. The township owns right down in here, maybe a couple other lots for the police station. That's about it.
Name and address.
Tim Campbell, 428 Irving Road. You're saying that was Cumberland County land. Before the agreement with the AOA in a 50-year lease, you had all the alleys from Greenwood Estates. Where did they go? So weren't they originally the village of Zerby County, that was laid out as Greenview Estates?
Paper Street is not open within the first 21 years of it being laid out. It reverts to the surrounding property owners. We have no right to do so other than condemnation.
I own the property on both sides.
And it's probably yours. You would have to.
According to the map.
Huh?
According to the map.
If it's an unopened
All
road.
through
Sir, listen to my answer.
Go ahead, sir.
If it's an unopened road or a paper street, we don't do it. We cannot open it unless we do condemnation and pay the people for it. Being that it's unopened, and I know that whole section up there has no public roads in it, we have no say in that. And again, that's not an ownership, that's a right-of-way issue. All these roads, we have right-of-ways. We don't own them. It allows everybody to use them to get around the town.
As of right now, it used to be on the GIS map, the Northumberland County GIS map, because I took pictures and copies of it. It used to say lease to the Aoaa. Because I was over at the courthouse a couple times, trying to get answers from the solicitor over there, who would never answer my emails or call me back. And I have copies of that that says lease to the Aoaa. So technically, if I went from my front yard to my backyard, I'm crossing over Aoaa property, correct?
I can't answer that. Because
I
I
just
don't know,
looked
we don't know the land.
I can answer that partially. I just looked on the GIS map tonight, and looked up some different ownership questions, and it definitely states Northumberland County Commission.
That's because they changed it after I did. I have the copy for it, I believe it says, lease to Aoaa. You think that's why it says it don't answer me? You think that's why it wasn't answering me? Then all of a sudden I go on there and it's gone, just like I'm missing. And I got the documents, because I'm smart enough to print them out. And that goes from, everybody knows, from the scale house all the way out to the bus station.
Yeah.
If you have a paper alley, that's what it says.
Yes, it does.
And wouldn't the township have something to do with that? When this all happened, couldn't we have stopped that?
This is, we can't stop you.
They couldn't be in agreement. They couldn't have stopped it and had that part second offer to people that own those properties.
If they're not open, we can't open them unless we pay for them.
But I go to the south side of, I live on technically the south side, you go to the north side of the mountain, you look on the map and quote Zerby Township, it says paper street. Look across the street.
Because it's within our township, doesn't mean we're owner of ownership of the township. Okay? Just because you're within Pennsylvania, doesn't mean the state owns your property.
I understand what you're saying.
And that's,
It's just,
not within our.
it's pretty fishy.
I will tell you one thing, and I've been here for the last 20-some years, and I was here the last 3 to 4 meetings when it was discussed. Nobody did more to try to discourage this or put up roadblocks, whether they were justifiable or unjustifiable, than this guy right next to me. A couple times I had to say, Mike, we can't do that. That is not our authority to do as a township. The whole bonding thing, like I said, is sketchy at best. But when we told him that's what we want, that's what we're going to require, they backed off as quick as you could. Now, whether it's dead or not, I'm not going to say, but it certainly put a bump in their road. Okay? It's really not fair to blame these people. And please, come to all the meetings. That's how you get transparency. That's why we're talking about this. We want you here. We enjoy helping.
You really do. Can I ask one more question?
Yes, sir.
If that's the case, and you say your hands are washed, say you go timber and they select them. Then we have the Aoaa step in and say, well, we want to make a trail out of the road. We wouldn't like Shamokin with signs that they can drive through town and visit the 8 businesses we have.
Yeah,
And people have to put up with all that noise.
Not like they don't already.
So you're saying we can't stop that either?
We're not allowing them on the roadways. How do we allow them to do it?
Will they do this smoking? Will they
Yeah.
continue to stop that? They do it here.
This board has never approved, other than a special fundraising event, for any ATV traffic on a public roadway. And I don't believe that's out there. So whatever smoking did, I can't speak to, but they've never done that.
So is the board willing to put that in writing and have it recorded that they will not authorize that?
Ultimately, I think this board would probably be able to do that.
That's part of it.
What about the people that are driving, I come home every day to 10th Street, and I see motorcycles and four-wheelers running around all the time.
I see them going down 225.
Yeah.
Go down that road. I see them every week.
I know.
We have a quiet area out there. We like to keep
We've
it
been
that way.
trying to stop motorcycle and ATV illegal traffic.
No, you're not gonna do
Since
it.
I've been here. Impossible.
No, I'm not disputing that. I'm not saying I never did it. I'll be honest.
I'm not saying I never did it either.
Okay, no, be honest here. But why don't they put that in writing, and the board here will approve it, that they won't allow it, like Shamokin in Zerby Township.
Yeah.
That would solve it right there for people, because they have nowhere to go then.
Yeah, stay out of the road.
That's what we're gonna have to
And Judy says, go ahead, Judy.
Well, if supervisors change, then those supervisors may have different opinions and they can go ahead and change it. So nothing like that, can be continuous.
But it's good to have something now, and if it comes up in the future, we can address it then.
Yes, you can.
And you say about the timbering project, we don't have no control? The timbering project, we have no control? And so we don't have a say? Well, how come everybody on the board don't agree with what they're trying to do because it's the county, but how comes the board isn't going with the residents to try to stop it?
I'm not
I'm out.
Probably other question.
Because they're not for us, they're not for us. Nobody on this board is for it, I've been here every meeting it was discussed. So
And I'm
I
sure
think
yours
you
are.
guys are a little bit misdirected in your anger, you really are.
Lost a
I
lot of
find
sleep,
it
lost a
also
lot of
to
sleep
say-
over this, I'll tell you that right now.
Go ahead.
Well, back me up since we're
And I find it a
probably
little
being-
suspicious too, the county didn't know where they were gonna timber.
Well, that comes from Sam the man, he
Well,
told me
doesn't matter
twice.
who it comes from, I still think that.
I'd be happy to have them here and talk.
Yeah, really.
Don't think by any minute they're gonna stop.
I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me at all.
Well, I know the commissioners told me that they are going to make sure from now on, they're gonna have one of them at their meetings all the time to make sure of what's going on. Because I think they've been bamboozled over the whole operation.
Well, Jeff,
And this isn't against you guys,
I
this is not
understand it,
against
but
you.
if that's what they're gonna do, good on them to do it. I just don't think that the information that you got was really all that accurate. I just don't see how commissioners at that level would not know what was occurring.
I thought the same thing, believe me.
Well, that's why we have lawyers. And both parties are saying the other one is lying. So that's why we have lawyers. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I hope people feel like things were cleared up. I did not get that impression that the AO, just in my conversation with Mr. Corsi, and I think Tim's questions were not adequately addressed. We were told at the commissioners' meeting that 6 years down the road, it would behoove us as citizens to elect people that we now are going to support no timbering, no trail development, okay? But, we are all human. We live, we work. So, you've got to trust your elected officials that they're going to do what's in your best interest. And no matter who's telling the truth here, whether it's the supervisor or the county, what's becoming obvious as we are all discussing things is somebody's not looking out for the citizens and our backs. And there's discrepancies. Don't misrepresent my words, because I have the notes, I have the right to know, and if we need a lawyer as a united group of citizens, that's where we'll head. And it won't be a local lawyer, I guarantee you that.
We wish you luck and we hope you stop.
It has been stopped.
It has been stopped, but the goal is,
For now.
the goal is to continue that and work with the township too, as my husband said, buffer zones, get zoning laws in place. That was already suggested to me pro bono by a lawyer in Scranton. So,
Well, pay attention to who you vote for on a larger scale than this small township.
well, we get it, but the citizens of Zerby have spoken.
I'm not
We're not
arguing with you, I'm
complacent like
simply
you.
making a statement. It's important that you know where people's alliances are. Because people can tell you one thing, and then once they're elected, their actions can demonstrate something else. All right, so it's important that you stay on top of things, you stay educated, you have a group, because groups often are much more powerful than just a small group of people. But, just if you have questions about things, come to us initially too. I will give you whatever information I have factually. If I don't have it, I will try to get it. I've been here for a very short period of time. This job, and I'm not looking for any kudos, is much more than a volunteer kind of position. This has been at least half-time, and it requires a lot of responsibility, professional, ethical behavior. And, the people who are here, in my experience, have demonstrated that to me since I've been here. That's all I can speak to.
I will say, get your facts before you proceed with anything. I had 2 people that come and talk to me at my house to get the facts. And I had another person that called the municipal building, Cindy, and I went out to see her personally and talked to her. That's all I had asked me.
I called, no one returned my call.
I emailed.
Okay, moving on. Any other questions? No other questions? All right, I am going to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you all.
7:32.
Not over. What's this about removal of the cross? It's all over the internet.
It may be over the internet, it's not in my box.
What's up, Smiley? You smiling about this? That's family heritage.
Yeah, come up here so I can hear you. I'll explain it to you.
Yeah, you explain it to me.
All right, I gotta back up a little bit.
Go ahead.
Let me think, let me get my train of thought going. As you know, we had a fire up there. A couple of months ago. Serious fire. I was up there with,
Yeah, it was him.
your name.
Get his excavator.
Yeah. Pretty good with it too. So anyhow, he spent a lot of time over there. Serious fire. We don't do it started, we got somebody needed. But anyhow, regardless of that, Bamber comes out, drew up after mine recommendation, and also, yeah, I think we did. To make a long story short, they doused it with water, I forgot how many gallons. That seemed to work pretty well. And then they started putting more holes in. And from those boreholes, it was determined, I think, that there was a constant 40 to 50 degree temperature. From what I understand, it basically means it's out. Yeah. Okay. So I guess from what I've heard, then Bamber and DEP stepped in and said we're going to reclaim it. I guess, I don't know for sure, I'll mountain down or something, flatten it out, plant it, reclaim it. Oh, yeah. And from what I heard, the part that they're going to reclaim, nowhere near cross. Okay? Nowhere near that.
They were digging my
Nowhere near that. So, from what I understand, can I finish? Patty Kowalski went to the Aoaa meeting, or we met with Corsi, I guess it was. And Corsi tried to explain to her that if for some reason Bamber changed their mind and it did include the cross, a good place to put it would be down on Sound. Nothing's gonna happen to that cross.
Are you sure of that though? Like you're 100% sure that that would not be touched?
How long is the lease up there? You guys.
Where is the lease? Right here. We'd like to see it.
Go look at it, public information.
Nobody can produce the lease.
You don't even see it, you need in my number.
I'm trying to answer your questions, sir. I'm telling you, the cross is not gonna be removed.
You're the wild girl guy.
I don't know what else to say.
Well, I hope that is maybe we can come up with something.
And if it's gonna be removed, I will be the first one to fight, but I'll tell you that.
I just need to clarify. This report did not.
Look, I'm done. Who asked that, Mr. Corsi? I'm done with the question. Okay, I'm not
Because
gonna
he didn't say that to me. His exact words were, I want that cross off that board.
Absolutely not.
He did say that to me, Liz, I'm just right here.
He may have said
Well, he
that.
was baiting.
He may have said that in jest.
I ran out of battery. I ran out of battery. Yeah. Still not seeing it. It says $43,000 over 6 years. That's like 8 extra residents instead of paying taxes.
who's it benefit? For how, what have they made in them for years? You know what I mean? Like, how much did they make? Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
All right, there you have it. And like I said, forgive the editing for the sun wasn't working for me, but remember to like and follow the Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, both at Coal Region Discontent, and look out for us on anchor.fm/Coal Region-Discontent. I hope you enjoyed it, and I tried to get it out in a timely fashion so you wouldn't have to wait. Have a good day, and God bless.